I apologized for the appearance of my daughter-in-law, which my mother-in-law found displeasing. During my father-in-law's 60th birthday celebration, she reprimanded me in front of our relatives, lamenting not just her lack of attractiveness, but also her perceived incompetence. It was truly humiliating. I found myself wondering where my usually supportive husband was during this ordeal. Was he occupied with our daughter? His absence was conspicuous. Upon my arrival at my in-laws' home, feeling ready to enjoy the festivities, my mother-in-law suddenly complained of chronic back pain, rendering her unable to participate. Consequently, she entrusted all party preparations to me. As the event progressed, she continued to denigrate me in front of our gathered relatives, casting a shadow over what should have been a joyous occasion. It felt as though the lively atmosphere had turned somber, resembling more of a funeral than a celebration. Then, breaking the uncomfortable silence, my father-in-law stood up. "Is that all you have to say?" Little did anyone know, this seemingly innocuous question would set off a chain of events beyond imagination. My name is Sarah, and I'm 35 years old. 6 years ago, I tied the knot with Michael, my husband, who happened to be 3 years my junior. Together, we have a delightful 5-year-old daughter. However, despite the joy of our family, there was always a shadow lurking in the form of my mother-in-law's disapproval. She harbored resentment towards me for being older than her son. Every holiday visit, be it New Year's, Memorial Day, or any national celebration, was tainted by her cutting remarks aimed at me, often in the absence of my husband. "I wish I had a younger, livelier, and more attractive daughter-in-law, not someone adorned with age spots like you," she would say with a sharp tongue. "Do I really look that old?" "Yes, very much so. Haven't you noticed your own reflection in the mirror every day?" Receiving criticism about one's appearance can be deeply hurtful, especially for women. Despite this, I tried to brush it off, considering our limited interactions occurring only a few times a year. However, instead of diffusing the situation, my nonchalant response seemed to further provoke her. "You're remarkably thick-skinned for a woman of your age. It's irritating how you remain unaffected by my words. You lack even a trace of humility," she continued, her words growing harsher with each exchange. "Yeah," was all I could muster in response. How should I confront my mother-in-law, whose words always leave me speechless? In front of my husband, she wears a facade of kindness, concealing her true nature. It's as if he's oblivious to her mistreatment of me. Yet, if I were to express my frustrations, I fear I'd bear the blame. So, I've endured in silence. Visiting their home with her presence feels like carrying a heavy burden. Despite this, it was a significant occasion, my gentle father-in-law's 60th birthday celebration. With numerous relatives gathering for the grand event, I chose to attend. Though my father-in-law is reserved, his subtle acts of kindness envelop me when my mother-in-law's hurtful words weigh me down. He gently approaches, offering solace with his words. "Sarah, if you're struggling, please don't hesitate to confide in me. I'd like to offer my support if that's all right with you." I couldn't help but wonder if my father-in-law was aware of the harassment I endured from my mother-in-law. Perhaps he chose to refrain from openly supporting me to shield me from further mistreatment behind the scenes. To honor our compassionate father-in-law, our family embarked on a 3-hour journey early in the morning to reach our in-laws' home. Feeling a bit under the weather with a low-grade fever and lingering fatigue, I entrusted the driving to my husband, Michael. Upon arrival, my mother-in-law emerged from the front door with an air of cheerfulness. Well, look who's here. It's been a while, Michael. You should visit more often. Oh dear, you look exhausted." "I've been driving non-stop, so it's understandable," Michael replied wearily. "You've clearly put in a lot of effort. I'll prepare the bed right away. Why don't you go rest in the back room?" "That sounds like a plan, Sarah. You should rest too. You've been tending to our child in the car. You must be exhausted. Plus, you don't seem well." "Oh, Michael, you didn't know. I spoke with Sarah yesterday, and we arranged to go shopping for the 60th birthday celebration." "Sarah, you go rest. Once you've placed the luggage at the entrance, we'll head out." Of course, I couldn't recall any such arrangement, nor did I recall discussing any shopping plans. After looking after our energetic 5-year-old daughter, I felt drained. Since I wasn't feeling well, I welcomed the chance to rest. Since Sarah isn't feeling well, let her rest. You can handle the shopping, but this is your father's special occasion. I want to pick out the finest ingredients with Sarah. Sarah, you'll stick to our plan, won't you? She had a knack for presenting excuses that left me no room for refusal. After dropping off the luggage, she grabbed my arm forcefully and directed me back into the car we had just exited. With an intense glare, she snapped, "You don't need rest right now." But almost instantly, her demeanor softened into a broad smile as she exclaimed, "Thank you for driving us. I really appreciate it." Knowing my mother-in-law's temperament, opposing her at that moment would likely ruin the entire day. With reluctance, I found myself settling into the driver's seat. "I'm feeling all right, Michael. You take a break. I'll accompany mother-in-law for shopping." Attempting to hand her daughter over to Michael, my mother-in-law swiftly intervened, taking the child from my arms and settling her into the child's seat before shutting the door firmly. Taking care of the child is a mother's responsibility. "Well then, Michael, we're off." As she settled into the passenger seat, her previously sweet demeanor vanished, replaced by a harsh tone as she began to chastise me. "So, you can't even manage to care for your own child? Quit relying on Michael for everything. You're nothing but an incompetent daughter-in-law, aging before your time." What was truly unsettling was her ability to maintain a sugary facade while my husband, Michael, remained within earshot, completely oblivious. "Wave goodbye to this microwave," she quipped as we embarked on the drive in my husband's unfamiliar car towards the bustling supermarket. Predictably, my mother-in-law wasted no time before launching into a lecture. "You'll regret lounging around while my son drives, mother-in-law," I retorted weakly. "Please refrain from such ominous remarks. I've been battling fever and fatigue since this morning. Your poor health stems from your lack of discipline, and your crow's feet, more pronounced. Those cheek spots, darker. It's painful to witness. Your skin has lost its former vitality," she criticized relentlessly. Drained of all energy to counter her harsh words, I merely nodded as we reached the supermarket. This is utterly exhausting. How do daughters-in-law worldwide endure such treatment from their mothers-in-law? My spirited mother-in-law sprang out of the car without a word of gratitude, immediately thrusting 2 shopping carts into my hands. "Move faster, you're so slow." Attempting to steer clear of the bustling crowds, I lagged behind, but she surged ahead, filling the carts with extravagant items like USDA prime beef, crab, salmon roe, and melons. She then proceeded to toss in unnecessary items. "Mother-in-law, do we really need all of this right now? I've already decided, we're stocking up so we won't have to make frequent trips. You should have known that without my having to tell you." Feeling utterly helpless, I allowed her to dictate the shopping list. By the time we finished, the carts were overflowing. "Let's head to checkout. Move quickly now, no dawdling." Despite her haste, when it was time to settle the bill at the checkout counter, my mother-in-law made no move to retrieve her wallet. "Mother-in-law, the payment," I ventured. She kept her hands folded behind her back, unmoving. When I pressed her again for the money, she shot me an angry glare. "You should foot the bill for everything." "Excuse me," I stammered. "As a wife, it's your responsibility to cater to your husband's family. Don't be miserly, just pay up." Reluctantly, I ended up covering the entire bill at the register, totaling $300. With no cash on hand, I had to charge it to my credit card. As a part-time worker trying to support my child, this financial blow hit hard. What made matters worse was that I had brought $300 as a birthday gift for my father-in-law's 60th birthday, but now I couldn't use it. This expense meant tightening our belts even further in the future, adding to the already heavy burden. I wonder how I'll break this news to Michael. If I were to speak up about this treatment, my mother-in-law might cause a scene. During the car ride home, she continued her onslaught of insults, showcasing an impressive array of verbal attacks. On our arrival home, my husband remained fast asleep, likely exhausted. Sensing an opportunity, my mother-in-law's smile widened as she began to assert her authority over me. "After you've put away the groceries, go eat in the garden immediately. Could I please have a moment to rest? You have no right to defy your mother-in-law. This is the consequence of letting Michael drive alone. You brought this upon yourself," I muttered. "If you have time to argue, then you have time to work. Hurry up, we're running out of time. After you've eaten, clean the bathroom and the toilet." Despite the injustice of the situation, I had no option but to endure it. Throughout the day, I toiled in the garden, pulling out weeds before tackling the grime and yellow stains in the bathroom and toilet. As I worked, I consoled myself with the thought that once the 60th birthday celebration concluded, I could enjoy some respite from my mother-in-law's presence. Just as I finished cleaning, my husband stirred from his slumber, surprised to find me still at work. "Sarah, are you all right? If you're not feeling well, don't push yourself too hard. Take a break," he urged. "Thank you, I'll take you up on that," I replied wearily. "Ouch, that hurts." But before I could finally rest, my mother-in-law suddenly let out a piercing cry, clutching her back in agony. Despite her earlier vitality, she now complained of sudden back pain, her demeanor shifting from lively to frail in an instant. "This is troublesome. My back is in excruciating pain. I can't manage anything. My chronic back issues have flared up once more. I won't be able to prepare food before our relatives arrive. Sarah, you're my only hope. But oh, what am I to do?" While her distressed demeanor seemed somewhat contrived, if her chronic back pain was genuine, then standing in the kitchen would indeed be impossible for her. With a heavy heart, I entrusted my husband with our daughter's care and reluctantly began cooking. "Sarah, are you certain you're all right?" "I'm fine. Cooking is my usual responsibility, remember?" I maintained a facade of strength for my husband, though my body was already weary. However, it was a significant day for my father-in-law, and I felt compelled to soldier on. My head is spinning, and the scent of food is making me queasy. But I must persevere for my father-in-law's sake. After completing the cooking, my father-in-law entered the kitchen to check on me. "You've worked tirelessly. Thank you for preparing all this food." "It's my pleasure. It's all for you. Please enjoy it later." As the relatives began to gather, each offering well wishes to my father-in-law, the atmosphere became animated. After the toasts were made and we were on the verge of starting the meal, my mother-in-law uttered something utterly shocking. "I regret to inform everyone that due to my chronic back pain acting up on this important birthday celebration, all the food was prepared by my daughter-in-law. I apologize for the lackluster quality of the dishes, courtesy of my unattractive daughter-in-law." Both my father-in-law and husband were stunned into silence by my mother-in-law's sudden outburst. "Not only is my daughter-in-law unattractive, but she's also clumsy and utterly inept. It's truly a shame," she continued, her tone dripping with disdain. As she exaggeratedly rubbed her back, my mother-in-law persisted in belittling me. "She's quite clumsy, you see. Without my assistance, she's helpless. I even question her ability to care for her own child. I worry whether Michael can cope with such a wife." What should have been a joyous occasion swiftly descended into a somber atmosphere, reminiscent more of a funeral than a celebration. My typically supportive husband, who should have been caring for our daughter, was conspicuously absent. Then, in a moment that shattered the tension, my father-in-law, who had been silently observing, rose to his feet. "Is that all you have to say?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. "Seems like it. Perhaps it's time to bid farewell to the useless one," my mother-in-law added, her words dripping with contempt. In that instant, my husband strode into the room, carrying our daughter in a suitcase. His expression was unusually stern. "Dad, as you suggested, I've packed her belongings," he declared firmly. My mother-in-law's smile hinted at satisfaction. "Sarah, it appears you're being shown the door," she taunted. But to her astonishment, my husband handed the suitcase to her. "What?" My father-in-law's booming voice delivered the final blow. "Take that and leave this house immediately." Despite her initial confusion, my mother-in-law swiftly grasped the gravity of the situation. "Why am I the one being asked to leave? It's Sarah who's incompetent. The bathroom is always covered in mold, the toilet left filthy, and you dare to label Sarah as useless when you hardly lift a finger to cook. And let's not forget how terribly you've treated her. I've had my fill. It's a mother-in-law's responsibility to guide her daughter-in-law. I was merely pointing out her flaws." "Guidance. Please. Do you think we're living in?" my father-in-law began, but the raised eyebrows of an enraged father-in-law left no room for support. Realizing she wouldn't garner any sympathy from him, my mother-in-law resorted to her usual theatrics, turning to my husband and bursting into tears. "Michael, don't get the wrong idea. Someday, we might have to take care of your father, right? So, I was trying to teach Sarah how to be a good wife, as difficult as that may have been. Taking care of him, that's a joke. I won't be fooled by you anymore. You've been mistreating Sarah all along, even today." Despite feeling unwell, she still came to celebrate Dad's 60th birthday. "Sarah volunteered to join the celebration, didn't she? Don't deny it. And you made her foot the bill for the groceries, didn't you?" I found a receipt from today in her bag when she was trying to get candies for our daughter. It clearly shows Sarah paid with her credit card. I just asked her to pay because I didn't have any cash on me. I was planning to reimburse her later, honestly. Really? If I hadn't noticed, you would have stayed silent about it. I've ignored the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts, but you've crossed a line. I'm tired of living with such a spiteful old woman. Witnessing my husband and father-in-law turn away from her, my mother-in-law reverted to her usual theatrics, blaming me with all her usual dramatic flair, tears streaming down her face. No, I haven't vocalized it, but it's undeniable that you've been mistreating me, isn't it? For the sake of my father-in-law and my husband, who had shown me unwavering support, I summoned the courage to speak the truth for the first time. I refused to let my mother-in-law continue to dictate the narrative. That's correct. We were informed by Mia. We're aware of the derogatory remarks you made about Sarah at the supermarket and in the car afterward. You forced Sarah to handle all the weeding and cleaning in the house. Yeah, Grandma was mean to Mommy. She made her clean lots of things. You can't just dismiss a child's words. Maya doesn't lie. Let's review the dash cam footage. That should clarify everything. Excellent suggestion, Sarah. I'll do that right away. Ignoring his mother's protests, Michael strode out to the parked car, starting the engine and pulling up the dash cam footage. The latest model, equipped to record both the road and the car's interior, provided crystal clear visuals, including facial expressions. It's all there. She said those things. I murmured. I'm appalled, echoed everyone as they watched the footage unfold. This is utterly unacceptable. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, who had remained inside the house, adamantly denying any wrongdoing, began to panic as tension thickened, rushing barefoot toward the car. Stop this immediately. Don't watch. But no amount of shouting could halt the revelation. With all her transgressions laid bare, my mother-in-law stood speechless, stunned into silence. That's when my father-in-law casually handed her a single piece of paper. I filled out my portion. You just need to complete yours and submit it. What? Is this a divorce form? I had to prepare it just in case. I never imagined I'd have to use it. Never darken my doorstep again. Wait, I promise to change. Promises won't suffice, Sarah. Please find it in your heart to forgive me. Seeing my mother-in-law plead for forgiveness, tears streaming down her face, was a pitiful sight. But I suspected it might be yet another performance. With resolve, I gently pushed her away. You've revealed your mistreatment of your daughter-in-law. I can never forgive you. It's best you leave before the neighbors become involved. Oh no, this is dreadful. The commotion caught the attention of neighbors who observed from a distance. Perhaps unwilling to create a scene, she swiftly accepted the divorce papers and her suitcase, miraculously recovered from her supposed back pain, and dashed out of the garden. With the villains swiftly dealt with, our once tense home was now heavy with remorse. I apologize for all this disruption during your 60th birthday celebration, Dad, I said sincerely, bracing for his response. Sarah, you bear no blame. I'm the one who should apologize for all the trouble we've caused. Let's put this behind us and start anew, he replied. A smile graced my father-in-law's face. The relatives, too, looked on with sympathetic expressions. Later, they commended the dishes I had prepared and enjoyed them with gusto. In that moment, all weariness seemed to evaporate into thin air. Thus, we commemorated my father-in-law's 60th birthday in grand style. Despite her initial reluctance, my mother-in-law eventually agreed to the divorce, and it concluded amicably. It also came to light that she had been embezzling funds from my father-in-law's account, resulting in an order for her to repay $10,000 that she had spent recklessly. Struggling to secure employment due to her lack of experience, she now works as a nighttime janitor in an office building. With little money remaining, she resides in a dilapidated apartment that has seen better days. Meanwhile, I discovered that I was pregnant with my second child. The discomfort I had experienced earlier was attributed to my pregnancy. 5 months have elapsed since then, and my husband Michael has been incredibly supportive. Our ultrasound revealed that we are expecting a baby boy. Both Michael and my father-in-law eagerly anticipate his arrival, already preparing for his welcome. My father-in-law even sent over a selection of blue baby clothes. Our darling daughter is thrilled at the prospect of having a younger brother and diligently practices caring for a baby with her dolls each day. Witnessing her enthusiasm fills me with boundless joy.
Why did someone get buried in the garden? I quickly covered my daughter's mouth as she blurted out the question. It was supposed to be a happy day celebrating our new house. I worried Ruby, the host, might react badly if my daughter embarrassed her. My brother had warned me about Ruby's temper. Thankfully, I managed to smooth things over. Later, as we were leaving, I found my daughter chatting with something by the flower bed. Suddenly, Ruby swung a bat at her. "Sarah," I cried out, reaching for her. "My name is Avon. I'm 35, and I live with my 5-year-old daughter, Sarah. My husband works away, so we see him rarely. It gets lonely without him. Thankfully, my parents live close by, just a 5-minute drive away. We visit them often, but sometimes there are issues when we go over." "Yvonne, there's a problem again?" "You're here so often, Yvonne. Isn't that too much? It's pointless for you to stay married." Those sharp words were from Ruby, my sister-in-law. My parents, along with my older brother Eugene and his wife Ruby, were living together temporarily. Eugene was building a new house, so they stayed with our parents until it was ready. Even if your husband's away, are you relying on your parents too much? Ruby, a year older than me, wasn't necessarily mean, but she was assertive and a bit snarky. I've never liked her, not since she started dating my brother. I still don't get what he sees in her. I never understood why she was so tough on me, her sister-in-law. Plus, she didn't seem to enjoy kids, especially my daughter. "Grandma, let's play," Sarah said, pulling my mother's hand excitedly. Ruby made a clearly annoyed face. It's exhausting when Sarah's here. She's so noisy. "Yvonne, you really need to discipline her more. It'll create problems later on." Those comments always made me uneasy. I'd only visited because Sarah wanted to see her grandparents, but Ruby's remarks always gave me a headache. The second issue was about my daughter Sarah. She has a strange ability to see things others can't and sense certain things. At first, we didn't believe it, but after she accurately found lost items and other eerie incidents, we started to accept it. It was a family secret we kept hidden. I never thought it would come out like this. Finally, the long cohabitation was ending. My brother and his wife's new house was ready, and they were moving out soon. I was looking forward to it. Living together had been tough. Ruby whispered to me, and I could only manage a weak smile. It wasn't just hard for her. I was relieved our parents' home would finally be peaceful. My daughter looked at me curiously. "Mom, why do you act differently around Ruby? You're more relaxed with Grandma and Eugene." "Well, you see, Eugene and I grew up together, but Ruby only recently joined our family through marriage." My daughter seemed unsure. "Sorry, was that confusing?" "No, I understand, but it's sad." "Sad?" I asked, puzzled. Sarah nodded. "It's sad that we finally became a family, and now we're going to be separated again soon." When Sarah speaks like that, it's oddly convincing. Separated. Could it be that Eugene and his wife are getting divorced? While it would be a relief for me, I feel bad for Eugene if he's upset. So they just finished building their new house, and now the idea of them divorcing so soon is hard to grasp. I couldn't understand it, so I simply asked Sarah to promise not to talk about it elsewhere and decided not to think about it too much. Sometime after Eugene and his wife moved, we got an invitation to their housewarming party. We wrapped a nice gift of money, and the 5 of us, including my parents, Sarah, and me, went over. Eugene's house was about a 20-minute drive from our parents' place. Since my small car couldn't fit all 5 of us, we had to use my father's car. It was an old manual transmission, which made me nervous, but my father is a safer driver than I am, so it should be fine. "It's pretty impressive to me that you can drive a stick shift," I said to him. When we arrived, I was immediately struck by the beauty of the place. It was a brand new build indeed. The exterior alone was impressive. The yard was spacious, and there was even a new flower bed near the bay window. There weren't any flowers yet, just soil, but it was still impressive. "Wow, it's so big," Sarah exclaimed, running around the yard with joy. "Hey, Sarah, I called out, trying to catch up to her, but Eugene stopped me. Let her play. It's okay if she wants to enjoy the big yard. Oh, thank you, I replied, trusting Eugene's judgment. I kept an eye on Sarah to make sure she stayed safe. While she stayed in the yard, Sarah wouldn't get lost or bother anyone. I found myself daydreaming about having a house of our own when Ruby came over, loudly reprimanding us from a distance. Hey, Yvonne, you should be keeping a closer eye on Sarah. Oh, did she do something? Sarah had been playing around, but she hadn't caused any trouble. I couldn't recall anything that would upset Ruby, but she seemed angry. Is it normal to let kids run wild at a housewarming? It's quite disruptive, don't you think? I'm sorry, Eugene said it was fine, so I thought it was okay. That's just Eugene being too polite to say anything. Don't take it personally. I couldn't afford to upset Ruby further. I had seen Eugene endure Ruby's outbursts many times before. I apologize. I'll make sure she behaves. I went after Sarah, who had just dashed past me. As I approached, I found her crouched by the flower bed, staring intently. All she could see was dirt. No flowers had bloomed yet. What's so fascinating, Sarah? What are you doing? When I asked from above, my daughter looked up and said, Why is there a person buried in the garden? What? After a moment to process her words, I instinctively covered my daughter's mouth. Of all things, she had to say that here during my brother and his wife's housewarming. It was meant to be a joyous occasion, but if Sarah said something inappropriate, it could cause trouble. Ruby had a temper, as my brother had warned me. It seemed my brother had heard, but fortunately, Ruby was engrossed in conversation with Mom and hadn't noticed. Look, Sarah, what a lovely house. Isn't it beautiful? Let's go inside. I caught my brother's eye, his expression mixed, and tried to distract my daughter as we moved. I kept my hand over her mouth, but Sarah squirmed free and said, Mom, it's strange. Why aren't we helping the person buried in the garden? Sarah, it's okay. I'll talk to Eugene. Sarah slipped away and ran to my brother, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the flower bed. Seeing the look on my brother's face, who knows? Sarah's determination spoke volumes. Sarah, do you see something by the flower bed? Sarah looks up at my brother, tilting her head. Yeah, Eugene, can't you see? We need to help them quickly. They're calling for Ruby, asking for her. This caught both my brother and me off guard, and we exchanged surprised glances. Ruby was still engrossed in conversation with Mom. Ruby's name, right here. My brother and I approached the flower bed. Upon closer inspection, the soil Sarah pointed to had a slightly different color, as if it had been disturbed before. A shiver ran down my spine as a chilling thought crossed my mind. What should we do, Eugene? We can't just ignore what Sarah said. Not because she's a child, but because it's Sarah. My brother fetched a small gardening spade from the back of the house. It seemed inadequate for digging, but it was all we had. When we tapped the soil, it felt unnaturally hard, as if something had been compacted to conceal it. My brother, perhaps frightened, was cautious and couldn't apply much force with the spade. Impatiently, Sarah grabbed the spade from him. Eugene, you're not good at this. Let me do it. Sarah, wait, I said, reaching out to stop her. But Ruby grabbed Sarah's wrist before I could react. Ruby had approached unnoticed and squatted down to Sarah's level, smiling brightly. Hey, Sarah, don't touch my special flower garden. Relieved at Ruby's cheerful demeanor, I pulled Sarah closer. That's right, Sarah. You can't touch things without permission. Sorry, Ruby. No problem, but don't touch it again. Ever. I sensed an unusual intensity in Ruby's demeanor. I lowered my head again, attempting to escape to my mother, Yvonne, with Sarah in tow. But Sarah pointed at the flower bed once more and exclaimed, Look, that person is watching Ruby over there. Sarah, you might scare Ruby with that talk. Please don't say such things. Whenever Sarah said something like this before, it left people pale and trembling. I imagined Ruby must be terrified to hear such things about our new home. Apologies, Ruby. It's just a misunderstanding by Sarah. I tried to make amends, glancing at Ruby's face. Despite any dislike I harbored for her, I felt sorry for frightening her. I thought I needed my brother Eugene to smooth things over, but Ruby's expression caught my breath. Instead of fear, her eyes were wide with anger. "Sarah, is someone really watching me?" "Yes, and they're asking for your help," Sarah replied. Ruby simply scoffed and smirked, but her eyes betrayed no amusement. For some reason, Ruby's expression filled me with dread, and I shivered. "I'm sorry, Ruby. It's fine. Just kids being kids," Ruby dismissed, though her tone lacked warmth. Eugene swiftly intervened between me and Ruby, diffusing the tension for the moment. We entered the new house with our parents and settled onto the plush new couch. "Wow, it's so comfy," Sarah exclaimed. Her spirits lifted in the new surroundings as she sank into the couch happily. It seemed she had completely forgotten the earlier incident, and I felt relieved. We ordered some sushi for takeout, chatting, and enjoying the meal. Sarah must have been tired from all the excitement because before long, she had fallen asleep on the couch. "Would you like to take her upstairs to bed? Should Eugene carry her?" "Really? Thank you. That would be helpful. We still have some time before we head back. It might be better than her sleeping in the busy living room." Initially, I thought so too, but then I had a bad feeling. "I think it's fine. She might feel lonely waking up alone." "Oh, she's already 5, isn't she? She'll be fine. She can sleep here." "Yvonne, you're a bit overprotective, aren't you?" Ruby murmured, smoothly returning to the conversation with my brother and parents. Despite the brief exchange, I couldn't stop sweating. After a while, Sarah woke up. "It's almost time to leave." We agreed with our dad and started preparing to go home. As I cleaned up the table and washed the cups, my daughter tugged on my clothes. "Hey, Mom, are we leaving now?" "Just a little longer, okay? We'll be leaving soon." "You're being impatient." Maybe it was because she had just woken up, but Sarah seemed a bit cranky. I didn't want to deal with a tantrum right now, so I decided to ask my mother for help. "Mom, could you please rinse these?" "Sarah is getting grumpy." My mother hurried over, but Ruby blocked her. "Then how about Sarah and I play in the yard while we wait?" "In the yard? Let's do that." My daughter lit up at the idea of going outside. More than that, I was surprised that Ruby invited her to play. She wasn't known to be fond of children, so I was puzzled but grateful. "Thank you, Ruby, but we're getting ready to head home." "It's just until you leave." "It's fine." "Come on, Sarah, let's go." "Yeah." Sarah cheerfully replied, taking Ruby's hand as they left. "It's odd. Ruby isn't usually interested in children," Eugene remarked, watching them go with a puzzled expression. "I know, right? Sarah and Ruby have met many times, but I've never seen them play together." Sarah isn't shy around strangers and would happily approach Ruby, but I always thought Ruby kept her distance. Yet today, Ruby was the one who initiated. Something felt off. "I'm going outside too," I announced, rushing out in a hurry. Sarah was squatting in front of the flower bed, engaged in conversation. Ruby was nowhere to be seen. Intrigued, I slowed my pace and hurried over to her. Then, in the next moment, I witnessed Ruby swinging a baseball bat at Sarah's head with all her strength. It was a terrifying moment. I grabbed my daughter's arm, and we both stumbled backward. A metallic clang reverberated through the yard as the bat struck where Sarah had been just moments before. Eugene and my parents rushed outside upon hearing the noise. "What was that, Ruby?" Eugene, shocked at the sight of Ruby holding the bat, inquired. My heart raced as I held Sarah tightly. It had been too close. If I had been a moment later, Sarah could have. I couldn't even bring myself to think about it. I glanced up at Ruby, her expression a mix of anger and perhaps indifference. "What happened?" Eugene asked suspiciously. "Ruby, did you try to hit Sarah with the bat?" "I can't believe it." Eugene approached Ruby in disbelief. "Is it true, Ruby? Why would you?" Ruby simply smirked. "Come on, Yvonne. It was just a joke." Anger surged within me, and I retorted, "A joke? Are you serious?" If that had hit her, do you realize what could have happened? It wouldn't have been a mere injury. As I spoke, I noticed something horrific. The end of the baseball bat was stained with something dark red. Catching my gaze, Ruby exhaled. Sarah started it, didn't she? She shouldn't have said what she did. My eyes were drawn involuntarily to the flower bed. Could it be true? Was there really someone buried beneath, as my daughter had claimed? Fear gripped me, making my teeth chatter. My brother, concerned, kept me and Sarah away from Ruby. What's going on, Ruby? It's nothing serious, just a joke. Maybe I went too far. My brother gazed at Ruby for a moment, then decisively went to the back of the yard. He grabbed a small shovel and started digging up the flower bed Sarah had pointed out earlier. Hey, Eugene, what are you doing? Ruby tried to intervene, but she couldn't stop my brother. He kept digging until he unearthed something, leaving him speechless and clutching his head. Ruby collapsed weakly beside him. Eugene, Yvonne, call the police, he said urgently. Quickly take Sarah and go home. From my brother's unusual behavior, I realized Sarah's words were true. He had found something Sarah had mentioned. I immediately dialed the police. Surprisingly, Ruby remained subdued until the police arrived. She repeated, "It's all over," as if in a daze, but she didn't become furious or try to escape. Once the police arrived, I decided to stay with my brother while leaving my daughter with my parents. My mother was too frightened to accompany us, and although my father offered to stay, we would then be without a driver. I'll be fine alone, I insisted, though it wasn't entirely true. I couldn't leave my brother by himself. Sarah, listen to Grandma and Grandpa and wait here, okay? Okay, Mommy. Take care of Eugene too. Of course. I couldn't gauge how much my daughter understood, but I reassured her with a smile. My brother appeared to be conversing calmly with the officer. I observed from a corner of the yard so as not to interfere. Suddenly, Ruby's voice erupted in anger. I've already told you, I don't know anything. Fine, let's go to the station and I'll explain everything there. You're just trying to blame me? I won't go. The officer looked puzzled by Ruby's outburst. A female officer attempted to grab Ruby's arm, but she shook her off and sought refuge behind my brother. Eugene, help me. My brother, visibly flustered, held Ruby's shoulder but remained conflicted, neither embracing her nor pushing her away. I didn't do anything wrong. It's a false accusation. Though my brother may have wanted to believe Ruby, her recent actions, like swinging a baseball bat at Sarah, suggested otherwise. Is someone watching me? Yeah, they're asking for Ruby's help. Ruby's response was a cynical ha, with no trace of a smile in her eyes. Her demeanor sent a chill down my spine, and I shuddered. I'm sorry, Ruby. It's okay. It's just kid stuff. Eugene quickly intervened between me and Ruby, momentarily diffusing the tension. We retreated into the new house with our parents, settling onto the plush couch. Wow, it's so comfy. Sarah's mood seemed to brighten in the new surroundings as she happily sank into the couch. She appeared to have forgotten the earlier incident, bringing a sense of relief. We ordered some takeout sushi, engaging in light conversation while eating. Sarah must have been exhausted from all the excitement, as she soon drifted off to sleep on the couch. Would you like to put her to bed upstairs? Should Eugene carry her? Really? Thank you. That would be helpful. We still have some time before we head back. It might be better than her sleeping in the busy living room. Initially, I thought so too. But then I had a bad feeling. I think it's fine. She might feel lonely waking up alone. Oh, she's already 5, isn't she? She'll be fine. She can sleep here. Yvonne, you're a bit overprotective, aren't you? Ruby murmured, seamlessly rejoining the conversation with my brother and parents. Despite the brief exchange, I couldn't shake off my nervousness. Soon after, Sarah woke up. It's time to leave. We agreed with our dad and began preparing to head home. As I tidied up the table and washed the cups, Sarah tugged on my clothes. Mom, are we leaving yet? Just a little longer, okay? We'll be leaving soon. You're being a bit impatient. Sarah seemed a bit cranky, perhaps due to just waking up. Not wanting to deal with a potential tantrum, I asked my mother for help. Mom, could you please rinse these? Sarah is getting a bit grumpy. My mother hurried over, but Ruby blocked her. How about Sarah and I play in the yard while we wait? In the yard? Yes, let's do that. Sarah was thrilled at the idea of going outside. I was surprised that Ruby invited her to play. Thank you, Ruby, but we're getting ready to head home. It's just until you leave. It's fine. Come on, let's go, Sarah. Yeah, Sarah cheerfully replied, taking Ruby's hand, and they left. It's odd. Ruby isn't usually fond of children, Eugene remarked, watching them go with a stunned expression. I agree. Ruby and my daughter have met many times, but I've never seen them play together. Sarah isn't shy with strangers and would happily approach Ruby, but I always thought Ruby kept her distance. Yet today, Ruby was the one who initiated. Something didn't feel right to me. I decided to go outside too. I rushed out hurriedly. Sarah was squatting in front of the flower bed, engaged in conversation. Ruby was nowhere to be seen. Intrigued, I slowed my pace and ran over to her. Then, in the next moment, I witnessed Ruby swinging a baseball bat at Sarah's head with all her might. It was a terrifying moment. I grabbed my daughter's arm, and we both stumbled backward. A metallic clang reverberated through the yard as the bat struck where Sarah